Welcome back to Musings by Nikki. I am Nikki, and I'm here today with two more kind of quick and easy versions of making the quilted cover. So in our last video, we made this one, and we made it by crumb quilting, and I love all of the tiny little bits and pieces that crumb quilting gets you. It's also a very good way to use your very tiny, teeniest little scraps. And it turns out with this great product. I went ahead and did the other piece that we made into a cover as well. But like I said in the video, I told you that I would show you what it looks like if I do some quilting. So I just put on kind of a quilting stitch, and I went around, and I didn't go, I mean, it would take forever and be hard if you went between every little block, because some of them get really small. So I just choose some kind of major pathways. So like here I came in and came down and went across, or here I'd go up and across and over, or down and across this way. So then I kind of flip it over and look around at the back and go, does it look like I've got most areas kind of quilted? And so it provides kind of a different hand feel. This one feels a little more loosey-goosey. This one feels more like a quilt. And then I went ahead and put I had some lace, I forget what this stuff is called, but it's like an edging piece. So I folded that over, and then I had some vintage old rickrack. So I sewed that around the edges of this cover. And again, I am not a quilter. I am not making lovely mitered corners or anything like that. I'm just making needlebook covers, and they're chunky and rustic, and that's kind of the look I like. So I've got two covers now for the needle books that are from my kit that's called Needlebook. So they will both fit inside of this cover here. And now we need to make a couple of covers for the ones that are using my needle and thread kit. And so I've got two different examples here, two different methods that we're going to use to make covers for that. The first one ends up slightly similar to the other one, but we just kind of start from a middle block and build out. So you will get these longer pieces and bigger edges on this one. And then this one is like a strip quilting type of thing. So I will show you how you make this piece as well. And this one in particular is really quick. So if you like the look of this is actually going to just go be a casserole thing in my kitchen. So, because every Sunday we have our whole family over for lunch, and so we end up with lots of casserole dishes and stuff. So this will be a nice big 9x13 you know, pad to put underneath those on my countertop. But so you can use them for that too if you want to whip some of those up. I always need more pads to go under those. But we will make a cover that looks like this, essentially like this as well. So let's start with this one. So this one, I believe, is called like Quilt As You Go. It's also crumb quilting, I believe. I don't know. I'm not a quilter again, guys, so I don't know all the terms. I have some pieces of, this is just a cotton fabric. This I got off of, I cut some embroidery off a pillowcase, an old vintage pillowcase, and these are just the pieces that came off of there that, you know, I don't need anymore. I am going to cut it down to roughly the size I need. So I can probably take a little bit off the top or bottom, and then I can come off the side as well. And so I'm gonna do that quick if I can find my fabric scissors. This does not need to be perfect. It just, you don't want a big excess piece, if you know what I mean. So I'm gonna take a little bit off the top here too. Let me look one more time. Okay. So you want a piece that's going to be a little bit bigger because we will trim it down in the end, but you know, you also don't want a big huge piece for this. The last time we just kind of built and built and built, but here we want a piece that's roughly the size of what we're going to be, we want our finished piece to be. And then I've got a bunch of more scraps. I do have a couple of the cut off pieces that we used, like that we cut off, so strips. These are pieced strips, and they're too thin to use for anything really in a journal or something, but I thought, you know, if we need to, we could use them here. So that's another great way to extend your stash. And then I'm just going to look through and I'm going to find some of my smaller pieces, because we'll start with our smallest pieces. So let me sort this out. I should have done this ahead of time, but I did not. Okay, I've got some of my smaller pieces here, because we're going to start with smaller pieces in the middle, and then we're going to build out from there. So you kind of, let me grab my example again. This was my first piece that I laid down, and you can kind of see then that it's, oh, stitch and flip. That's another name for this. So you build out from there. So there's going to be a focal point or kind of a center point most of the time, and then you'll get longer pieces. So if you wanted on your cover, if you wanted to start in the center of what will be the front of your journal and then build out from there, you certainly can. Or you can start right in the center and build out from there. It's kind of up to you. I'm going to just go in the center because I think it's a little easier to just start, you know, middle-ish. So I'm going to take one of my littler scraps and lay it down right in the center. I think I'll go with this guy right here. So what we're going to do first is lay it face down, or you know, wrong side up. And we're just going to sew along one of the straight edges. It doesn't matter which one. So I'm just going to send it through. Whoops, where'd my foot pedal go? All right. All right, so we've got our first piece sewn on, stitch and flip. And then we're just gonna finger press that open, essentially. So as you can see, I didn't hit the middle. If you wanna hit the middle, you should start down here, so when you flip it open. Totally forgot about that, but that's okay. So I'm finger pressing that open. So I've got one finished edge here, and I've got 3 raw edges here. So next I'm going to find my next piece of scrap, and I'm going to lay it along one of the unfinished edges. This is similar to what we did in the last one, the crumb quilting thing. We just want to lay wrong sides together, because then as we sew across that, we will flip it open, and now we'll have created another finished edge on our start block. And we're just going to keep building like that. So I'm going to find one that is roughly, let's see, I might just use that one. You can cut down too. Here's the other thing. It's harder to trim when you're doing it this way. So you definitely want to, like, if you have a piece that overlaps quite a bit like this, now you can trim that piece up, because otherwise you'll end up with a lot of bulk underneath this, and you don't want that. So I'm going to say those two. I'm going to lay it wrong side down against the right side, and I'm going to just send it through my machine right along that edge. Now we'll open that one up. Now we have this as a finished edge, and this is a finished edge. And now we've got raw edges here, here, and here, and we've still got 2 raw edges here. And now you can continue to build out in whatever direction you feel like going with this. But the trick is you want to cover as many of the raw edges as possible at a time. So like right here, I'm going to try and cover this. Oops, I gotta go this way. I'm going to cover this raw edge over here. So I'm going to sew that. And now this is a raw edge, this is, and this is. So we can find one strip that'll go across all three of those. That would be great. So if I've got something long enough to cover from this edge to this edge. So this one isn't quite long enough. So this is us just auditioning scraps here, right? This one would be long enough. So I'm going to put this one, because now I want it to capture these edges, this edge and this edge. So this is where you need kind of longer and longer pieces. So you start with your smaller pieces and then you just get longer and longer pieces going as you go here. So now we'll open that up and I'm just finger pressing down. So now this is a finished edge and these are finished edges. And we're just going to keep building our block out like this. Now we've got this edge we need to put something on. We've got these edges over here, right? And then eventually we're going to need to come along the bottom of this as well. So I'm going to just keep patching with my pieces here. So it looks like that will cover there. So I'll do that. And then sometimes to expedite the process even, if I know, okay, I can put that piece here, I'll find one that I can piece here as well, and that will kind of buy me time, or save me time, excuse me. So that fits there. And again, it doesn't really matter on the size of things, although I am going to trim these little corners off. Triangles also work great for when we get down to the corners of this as well. So now I'm going to sew those edges. All right, so now we've got this opened up like this, and we can just keep going and building out along edges here. And I will, let's see, you can go, you know, like if you decide you want to go sideways to get from this seam to this seam or something, I think I'll do that with this piece. It just kind of depends on where your pieces fit. And you can audition them by then kind of just holding it in place and flipping it down and seeing what you think that'll look like. And for this one, that looks good. And then maybe I will see if there's a piece that I have that would go, maybe this green piece. And eventually you just want to make sure you're overlapping the edges. That's the goal, is building out to where you overlap the edges. So if I go like this with this one, yeah. And then I can trim off this bit here, because now I know that I'm going to build over that. So I'm going to come with this scrap here. So I'll sew these two. All right, there we're going, and we just keep building. That's what we're doing. This has got some paper glued on the back. Oh, forget it. Not worth the fight. I do have some of my 2 patches that I have left over from the last project, and you can audition those on your piece as well. That gives you just some more texture. I don't like all that dark together there, so I'm going to put something lighter in that corner there. Maybe I've got this big thing here. Maybe we can put some more. I love this fabric. We could put a piece of this. Across there. Yeah, I think I like that. So again, I'm just making sure I make it past the raw edge here and then all the way past my raw edge up there. You just want to make sure you keep covering all the way across raw edges, otherwise you're gonna get yourself in a pickle, and then you'll have like a weird spot. And you can, if you ever find yourself, the first time I did this, I found myself like with a weird spot and there was no way I could sew to the raw edge. So I just had to kind of applique a piece over the top, and that works too. You can totally do that. Also, it would be beneficial if you had an iron and you were pressing in between here, but you know, this is Nikki. That's not how I roll. I think I can build this piece. If I put this piece here, it will go out to the edge over here, and it will come all the way up here. So yeah, I think I'll put that piece there. I want that nice and flat. And I just want to make sure this is going to go off the edge up here. Oh, it doesn't come all the way down though, so that's not going to work. It's not quite long enough. Oh, I do have some strips though from yesterday as well. That could come this piece wants to curl up here. Oh, if I do this edge. So I'm just going to keep building, guys. I don't think you need to listen to me talk through every single bit of this decision-making process. I think you get the idea. I'll just put it on fast forward and you guys can watch as I go here. I'm going to save this till I get over here because these are going to need to be some longer strip pieces. And if I use some that are broken up like this already, that will help. So let's see what I've got here. I'm just going to put this on fast forward and let you guys watch what I'm doing, and then I'll rejoin you in a few minutes. Alright guys, I'm going to show you something here. I'm going to drop back in. So I'm having this long edge here that I've got to kind of try and cover. And rather than just put in another long strip, what I'm going to do is use this, that's a 2-patch, and then I've got another piece here that I'm going to sew onto the end to make it long enough. But that way it will keep breaking it up rather than one long, because I've already got this long triangle in here of this fabric, and I want to keep it broken up some and keep it looking like it's smaller crumbs. So I'm going to sew these two together to make a longer patch, or a longer strip, excuse me. And that way I've got a longer piece here, but it's actually 3 different pieces, so I can go all the way from this corner down here and cover that up all the way up to where I need to get up here, and I can make sure I catch all the edges in there. So this piece will work good, and when I flip it over it'll look like it's got 3 separate piecings in there, which is awesome. right, guys. So I have got, if I flip this over, you can see I've got my white piece covered to all of the edges. There are lots of little cut threads back here, but that's okay because this is eventually, that's just a foundation piece, and that's going to be in the middle. So I've got all my little pieces sewn together here, and that took, you know, just a little bit of time compared to the method we did yesterday, although it does get you, you know, some of these longer strips like this, bigger sections. However, you can avoid that by, like I said, piecing things together as well. So now we're going to just trim this piece up, and I'm just going to trim it up along the edges here to make it easier to work with. Eventually I'll have to size it down to the cover, the size of the cover that I want. I'm not going to go through all of that stuff in this video because I did in my last one. My last one was a long, exhaustive video. So, you know, we talked through how to do different bindings to it and stuff if you want. You could just blanket stitch or slow stitch around the edge of this once you get it finished. If you'd like to do that, you could certainly do that. You know, the way you finish the edges is kind of up to you. Like I showed you, I put lace. I cut the foundation piece weird down here, but that's okay. You could put lace around it like I did. You know, there's a whole bunches of possibilities. But now that you have your foundation piece, you can turn this into your cover. So you're just going to want to measure and make sure as you're measuring, it's easier to see on this less busy side. Make sure as your cover comes over, whatever size signature you have, right? So this folds over and here's middle. Make sure that your signature is going to have a little bit of room on both sides from your finished piece, because we're going to attach a closure either from side to side or top to bottom. So there just has to be a way that this can fit in addition to our needlebook signature or insert there as well. So this is our first way that we're looking at today. So our sew and flip, or sew as you go, or whatever you want to call it. So this is kind of a faster version and gives you a little bit different look. You could go in and again quilt along some of these edges if you wanted to, and by that I just mean, you know, sew. You could tie it like you would a traditional quilt. You could tie it with some cotton or some embroidery floss or yarn or whatever look you're going for. So sorry, I'm adjusting my, gotta adjust here. So this is the first one. Now I'm going to grab some strips and I'll show you the next one. So these are our quilt as you go ones, and hold on, I'll be right back. All right, guys, so now I've got a bunch of strips, and it doesn't matter how long or, I guess how wide. You can adjust that as you go, and I've got my next piece of foundation because we're going to use a foundation piece for this as well. And again, I am going to trim it because I don't need to make a huge piece. There's a little bit of a tear there, so I'm going to cut that off. And then, you know, eventually you can trim the sewn piece down to your exact size. I'm just cutting it down so I don't, you know, make a huge, you know, use up more scraps than I need and end up having to cut a bunch of them off. So there we go. That's going to be a little bit bigger than the size that I would need, so that works perfectly. And now this is kind of the same concept. We're going to take a strip of cloth and lay one down, and I'm just going to go slightly over the edges like this, and then I'm going to come down and I'm going to trim off, and then save your pieces because you can use these, I'll show you, you can piece them together so you don't have long stripes. You know, you can piece multiple strips together but for this one we're going to do it like this. And then I'm going to take another strip of fabric and lay it right over the top, lining up the edges. So mine are torn and they want to curl a little on the edges depending on which direction I tore them. So I'm just going to make sure they're, you know, pushed down as flat as possible. Now you can try to make them exactly straight as you go, but I like wonky, so I try to make some of them go where they're wider at the bottom and thinner at the top. And you know, here's one that's a little thinner at the top and wider at the bottom, and then this one goes a little wider here. This is my foundation piece, so I kind of like it to get a little bit skewed because I think that just provides some interest. If you're one of those people that really wants like straight lines, then by all means go ahead and sew these straight. It's up to you. This first one I'm going to sew just straight down on this one side. So I'm going to go sew these two together, and that will attach it to our foundation piece. So I'm going to sew those together. All right, so we can open up this blue one and just finger press that open. And now we've got our start of our strip quilt square or quilt top or whatever you want to call these, cover, quilted cover. And then we're just going to do the same thing like we did before. We're going to sew on either side of those and then flip open, sew on either side of those and flip open. So you can use, again, as wide or as narrow a strip as you want. This is a bit wider. You don't have to use wider strips. You can certainly make them skinnier. I think there's great interest in that. So I'm going to cut this one in half because I want there to be a little bit more variation. And then I'm going to lay that one down on this side. But to get it to be a little bit skewed, I'm going to line it up with the right on the edge down here, but then I'm going to make it, you know, make a long skinny wedge here. So that way when I flip it, you'll see less of the yellow and more of the green on that edge. And again, to save time, you can line up one on this edge and one on this edge at the same time. So let me grab another piece that I want along there. Maybe I'll do some of those green flowers, but I think I'm going to cut, well, first let me cut it to length. And then I'm going to cut it down a little. So I'll lay that one on as well. That way I can sew them both at the same time. And this one I'll do a little bit askew as well. Just trying to make sure that the one I've finger pressed down underneath is, you know, laying flat as it needs to. Okay, now I will sew those. All right, so that's how my strip quilt looks right now, and I'm just gonna literally keep going. I did bring out these blue pieces and I thought they might not be long enough, but it looks like they're just long enough. But this is where I was gonna say, if it's not long enough, what you could do is piece two pieces together, and then you can lay that in and you'll get some variation too. You'll just get some half and half pieces like that. And if you want to piece some pieces together, you could certainly do that, and it'll give you a little bit more piecey, kind of like crumb quilty look. I think I'll just stick with long strips for this one and see how that goes. I'm going to cut this one down. And I think I will cut that in half as well. guys. And here we are with our finished strip piece. So now, as you can see, I've got them all sewn onto my foundation piece on the back, and I'm going to go ahead and trim this down to roughly the size of my foundation piece. All right, so there is my strip quilt piece. And now, again, with this one, you can bind it however you want to. You can do the edges, you know, around the edges however you want to. On this one, I just chose to take some strips of cloth that I had and fold it over, fold the ends in, and then fold the whole thing in, and just sew it on. Again, this is not anything fancy here, what I did. Let me show you. I just went up, I did the top and bottom edges first, and then I did the side seams next, and ended up with this. This one does have a piece of felt in between it, so what you're going to want to do is take this, lay it over a piece of felt, and then put a backing fabric on the back side of the fabric. So this one has the strip piece on the foundation, then there's a piece of felt behind that, and then there is this cloth on the inside of the, well, if this was a journal cover, right? So you want this piece, a piece of felt in here. I think I've got one over here. So you can put a piece of felt in here, and then, or, you know, batting, if you've got batting, you could just put another piece of flannel or anything. What it does is it just kind of acts as a stabilizer, so it makes the whole thing just kind of stay together a little bit better. It gives it a little bit more weight as you're going to use it. But yeah, so then you can put stabilizer or something, some sort of something in between, and then your piece of whatever backing, you know, fabric. Let's use another one of these pillowcase sheet pieces. So then you would put that on, right? And then you just cut it down to whatever size you want and bind the edges however you decide to do that. If you want to do it the way I did it in the last video, you can certainly watch that again, or whatever. You guys are creative people. You can use seam binding. Most of us journal makers have seam binding around at some point. You could fold some lace over the edges. Like I said, you could go and blanket stitch around it. You can kind of do whatever you want to. And then you end up with your finished piece. Just make sure that you're doing it to the sizes and dimensions that you want for your cover. So I am going to finish off those last two pieces that we just made. So I'm going to finish them off. Don't mind my squeaky chair. Let me grab my other one back over here. Not that. So I'm going to take these two and I am going to bind them off, finish them up somehow. Then I will meet you back in the next video when we will start tackling the felt needle book insert piece of this project. So thanks for hanging out with me today. I hope that you guys are finding this interesting and having fun following along and dreaming up your own version of this. If you have any questions, leave them in the description, or leave them in the comments, and I will try to answer them the best that I can. And I hope that you guys are having a wonderful morning or afternoon or evening or middle of the night, whatever time it is on whatever side of this globe of ours that you live on. And until I see you guys next time, take care, stay safe, and God bless you. Bye-bye.